Thank you all for being here, all the commissioners. I personally appreciate it. I've been anxious to get back to in-person meetings. I'm fairly adept at that. I'm a dinosaur when it comes to Zoom meetings. So I never can see who wants their hand up in Zoom meetings, never can see who's speaking if they don't introduce themselves. So this is a lot better. I can go, no, wait a minute, just wait a minute. Yeah. Anyway, if we'll stand up and have the pledge of allegiance. They switched the flag on. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If we could have a moment of silence, you can stand or sit, it doesn't matter. A moment of silence for all the troops out there, especially those ones getting out of Afghanistan. I hope nobody gets hurt as we get out. Thank you very much. Let's do a roll call, and we'll start with that side of the table and work our way around for commissioners, because I get told I don't jumble it up enough. So go right ahead.
Bill Stevens, present.
Dave Jasinski.
Gary Persinger.
Paul Bauer.
And Dale Cook, the mayor, present. And we also have
Fred Townsend, town solicitor.
Sam Macker, police chief.
Bill Zolper, town manager.
Mr. Zolper. Make sure you have your mic up high enough so we can hear you. We know you're a quiet fella.
Okay. I'll make sure.
I explained earlier that we're going to move item number 9 up to item number 5. So with that in mind, can I get a motion to accept the agenda as amended?
Motion.
Second.
Motion and second by Commissioner Bauer and Commissioner Persinger. Is there any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any against? Any abstain? Almost said transportation for some reason. Okay, it's unanimous, Kate. Updates and announcements. I have a couple, and then I want to ask the commissioners if they have any. We just got an election mailer got mailed out to everybody in the town. Everybody owns property in the town. It gives all the specific dates and all the important dates, voter registration forms, all the deadlines, the instructions for request for absentee ballot, where to submit, et cetera, all that information. And I know that it got to somebody in Northern Virginia this morning. And I asked, well, why didn't we get it here first? Well, it got mailed in Northern Virginia. So Northern Virginia got it first, and we should get it Monday. I'm guessing if you don't get it tomorrow. So we're well ahead of the ballgame there. Elaine Bowl, excuse me, is the chairman of that committee, and she and I and the town manager and Kate have been working very, very hard to get everything on the move and be ahead of time this year. So I thank them very much. That's one. The marketing committee has done an absolutely excellent job. I'm going to leave that to Commissioner Bauer to explain, but they're now taking donations for beautification plantings around the town with sponsorship signs. So if you see them, you'll start to see them out, but I'll call Commissioner Bauer to explain it a little deeper.
Yeah, when we task that we put together there was to raise money to offset the $32,000 that we pay in beautification. And it was a way to raise funds, meeting strips getting redone. So it was a good opportunity to put an adoption of, you can adopt the highway. So we got 2 sponsors in so far, Octo Lounge, which is a boat out on the bay, and then Bobby Rediford just,
very good.
she just committed to do one as well. So we'd like, we don't want to clog up the thing, but, we want to have, enough around town that you can adopt things. And I think after you get a few out there, everybody's going to say, hey, where do you get those at? It's $500 for, I guess it was summer, per year, $500 per year.
Yeah, and it's surprising people don't think about how much it costs for those flowers. I mean, and to keep them alive and well and looking a little bit better than normal. And it's about $35,000 a year. So it's truly amazing how much the town spends. And I'll remind people, we don't have a property tax. We have very sporadic, different types of income. We don't have property taxes. So, you know, the donation is really, really helping. And thank you, Commissioner Bauer, for all the work you've done on that. And thank you for the marketing committee for the work they've
They're
done.
doing a great job.
Yes,
Some
sir.
talented people on that team.
Are there any other announcements any of the commissioners would like to make? I know
I
I've
have
missed. Go ahead.
Our lifeguards finished first in the competition on Wednesday. So once again,
Very, yes, very good, that is good.
so I'm going to get some names. We'll do some recognition for them in the next meeting.
Very good, very good. Any other announcements? Any at all? I'm sure there are a bunch we've forgotten, but if anybody out there thinks about it and sends them in early before the meetings, that way we can announce things coming up the following month. We're just excited about being back in the life-saving station. And chairs at work.
Most of them.
The next item is approval of the minutes. Is there a motion to accept the June 11th minutes?
Motion?
Second.
There's a motion by Commissioner Barr, seconded by Commissioner Jazinski to accept the June 11th minutes. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any against, say nay. Any abstentions? Unanimous, Kate. And secondly, is there a motion to accept the June 25th, 2021 Special Town Commissioners meeting minutes?
So moved.
So moved by Commissioner Bauer, seconded by Commissioner Stevens. Any further discussion on the item?
Yeah, I have one change to the minutes. On the second page, top of the second page, it should say state patron rather than public. So it's just the reverse of what's written there. We made the change so that instead of saying public, as it reads in the current ordinance, we changed that to patron.
Good catch.
So we've changed it back from public to patron.
We changed it from public to
Okay,
patron.
all right.
Yes.
All right. With that amendment, are there any other amendments to this minutes?
I didn't catch that.
With that amendment, then is there a motion to accept the minutes with,
Motion to accept the minutes as modified by Commissioner Persinger.
Second?
and motion by Commissioner Jazinski. No, it's supposed to face that way, so they know who you are. And second by Commissioner Bauer. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any against, say nay. Any abstentions? Unanimous, Kate. Item number 1, discuss and possibly vote to approve the applications for 2021 expansion of premises request for the August 21, 2021 running of the Bull event and the 10th annual Dewey Goes Pink 5K on October 9th, 2021, submitted by Steve Montgomery. Mr. Townsend, if you'll handle the public hearing.
Okay, thank you. We have an application before us dated June the 8th, addressed to our town manager, submitted by Steve Montgomery. He is in the audience, as I see, and he's proposing an expansion of the starboard establishment for 2 different events, each of which call for the expansion of the premises to allow for patrons to occupy areas that they're generally not permitted. Is there,
No, my fault, I skipped something by mistake.
do you want to go back to it?
Yeah,
Or?
if you don't mind,
Nope.
Charlie, I had a request, and I skipped public comment. Mr. Bauer,
Thank you, yep.
thank you, Mr. Bauer, I appreciate it.
Actually, our nice person there in the back caught that.
Oh, okay. Kate, you gotta wave at him. You gotta say, hey, Dave, stop. I mean, and I even mentioned it, we even discussed it earlier, and I still slip right past it, I apologize. We have public comment that I missed, I can't believe it, even has an asterisk next to it. Mr. Smith, you had asked to be heard in public, so do you want to explain what?
Just a quick intro on that video.
Yes, please, come up to.
Rules. Hi, I'm Jeffrey Smith. I live at 30 C Strand, and I'm here to introduce this short clip that kind of like the health crisis and others maybe makes us reflect on some big pictures of what's important. And that is to be getting along and to think about the environment that is the golden goose that creates all of the. I'm glad we didn't have to go after running into bulls, because that's a great event, and these other things don't get as much attention sometimes. But they're what underscore everything. So the environment that brings everybody here is really what this is about. And so this is set.
Pull the mic around towards you.
This is set slightly short of Dewey, but a lot of us get exercise down there because up there is a little more crowded. So I'll let the video speak for itself and then hope that we can move towards that, thinking about the larger picture as we negotiate with the carriers and deal with this issue. And I'll be watching that from home. Number 5.
Thank you. Do we need the lights off so we can see it better, Kate? Why don't you move a little bit further out that way, and we'll ask you, and we'll turn that way. The audience needs to see it. That's good. Bill, would you push that back? Yep. Mr. Smith, did you want to make a comment to sum up? Come on up to the, thank you, I appreciate it.
So, as with any film, movie, or whatever, we all take from what we want. But I think, again, the beauty of this area, I've not ever seen on the East Coast an area so beautiful as south of us. I've lived lots of places, the Hamptons, and now it's called, and this is a gorgeous area. If they do that there, they'll do worse here. 1,000 feet is how far those poles will broadcast. They have 1 per mile right now. That means that they'll have 25 poles. Something to think about.
Thank you very much. Okay, is there any other public comment that needs to be made? Excuse me? Oh, did we want to do that now? That's fine with me. All right, because it's about a different subject. But to be read into the record 7/9/21 of the meeting. As I mentioned to people earlier, people can send things in for the record. That doesn't necessarily mean that they'll be read vocally or verbally into the record. Sometimes they're just placed into the record with the minutes of the meeting. But we only had one person that wrote in, so I want to read it for the record. Hello. Unfortunately, I am unable to attend the July 9th Town Council meeting. I am a homeowner of 21 Bellevue, Unit Number 4. I want to express my concern and the concerns of many of the owners on Bellevue Street regarding the application to rezone 26 Bellevue Street from resort residential to resort business. If the current Hammerhead property is enlarged, either the building structure or the addition of an outside patio, we have the following concerns. Number one, there is no parking available on Bellevue Street to support the additional restaurant customers. Number two, there will be an unacceptable increase in traffic on Bellevue Street with customers looking for available parking. There's already a large amount of traffic on Bellevue due to the vendor wins ice cream store. With a large number of children from homeowners and renters, this would create an unsafe and unacceptable environment. Number three, an outside patio would create an unacceptable amount of noise. Number four, the enlarged restaurant footprint would create additional trash requirements and the need for additional dumpsters that will create an excessive amount of noise when being emptied by the waste management company, and the dumpsters would probably create an unacceptable amount of smell. We urge you to disapprove the proposed rezoning. Thank you, Gary Karp, 21 Bellevue Street, Unit Number 4, Dewey Beach, Delaware 19971, and then his telephone number. And we'll put this in with the minutes of the meeting. All right, is there anybody else that has a public announcement they'd like to make, or public comment they'd like to make at this time? Hearing none, we'll move on. Again, we'll go back, and I apologize for interrupting you, Mr. Townsend. We'll go back to item number 1, and I'll read that item off. Discuss and possibly vote to approve the application for 2021 expansion of premises request, plural, for the August 21, 2021 Running of the Bull event and the 10th annual Dewey Goes Pink 5K on October 9th, 2021, submitted by Steve Montgomery. Mr. Townsend, is yours.
Thank you, Mayor. I think at this point, unless there are any questions from the commissioners, we could just simply hear from the applicant, and then we'll invite any public who wishes to speak on the subject to do so.
Sure. Steve Montgomery, the Starboard. I offered to bring champagne tonight to kick off the first meeting back in Vernon in public, but the mayor said starting off with drunk commissioners was not going to be a good way to start.
But you do want your application approved, right?
It's a quandary.
I have sat up here for 15 or 20 years for the same reason, so I don't want to take any more time than needed. Two things I just wanted to clear up being 2021 following last year is the Running of the Bull is a big deal to a lot of people in this town. It's a pain in my rear, but we do it pretty well. We make it work, and it's been turned into a very nice charitable event for the Rehoboth Fire Department. This year, we're asking for $10 donations for every single participant. We're doing t-shirts online. We're doing everything to try and increase the $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 donation to $15,000 or $20,000 for our fire department, which is we all would agree with. We're doing the kids running on the beach, kids running of the bull on the beach that morning. That has become really popular with the kids to make the thing well-rounded. The only reason it's August 21st, which I don't think we ever want to do again, we usually like to do it early in the season, get it over, was COVID, trying to push it later. And I literally pushed it as late as we possibly could with still having some staff, because what I found out this morning in interviewing these college kids, they all start leaving between July 27th and August 15th, 20th. They're gone. So the good news is we'll be able to get to the Giant again up the highway. The bad news is we're not going to have any staff. But that's why we have pushed it to August 21st. My intention would, unless we all decide that it really went well late in August, generally we moved it from for the first 15, 20 years we're in July. We moved it into June to try to build June, and that's what I would anticipate we go back to next year. But this way we kind of get back to normalcy of having this event and doing it the way we've done it for the last 23 years. This year would be 24. I'm not sure who I'm going to come up with the celebrity next year, honor the 25th, but I got a year to think about that. The Dewey Goes Pink application, I think speaks for itself. Everyone knows what that's about. We've just opened the sign-ups and registrations, and that's going to sell out at 3,500 people is what we did. Last year was kind of neat, just to add in, we did a pandemic Dewey Goes Pink where we just sold T-shirts that said Dewey Goes Pandemic instead of Dewey Goes Pink, and we're able to donate $68,000 to the Breast Cancer Coalition. So that in itself shows how big the event has gotten. This year we're adding a golf tournament to it and just making everything that second week of October to do around pink and breast cancer awareness. And it's more for me, I guess, here is to answer any questions anybody would have on either of the events. One thing I would say, Jim Dedes and I discussed this. We're operating in a little bit different thing right now with the COVID expansion of premise, and to clear up my common sense understanding would be when I come for these two events, which we do the same 3 events every year for the last dozen plus years, is it would go back to the old way of doing things where we come in, it's a $500 fee, application fee, and the difference in a Run Into the Bull, a Dewey Goes Pink versus everyday operating with the parking lot as a restaurant, which it literally is a full restaurant in front of a restaurant now, is that it's not seated tables. You can host an event there rather than the agreement right now is seated dining, seated tables. And, I can't say enough about how wonderful that's working for the town. It's the image it's given our town. It's been great. So that part, I don't want to screw up that. We want to be able to host our one-day events, and it'll be a lot of fun taking that all down for a few hours and putting it all right back up that night. But heck, we did it 2 nights ago for the storm, so we can do it again. Any questions on either of the events?
From the commissioners?
We approved 4 per year, right? Didn't we do that?
We approved the ability to do 4, but I think it's 4, but you still come to the council to get approval on it. Mine are easy because they've been done in past. We've had a couple other Dewey beers done one year where it's just keeping it the way we do it each time.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, just if you could explain a little bit the additional security that you and the town come to agreement on for each event.
We provide security at all the events. I mean, it's whether it's local Dewey police, whether it's state police. It's usually a combination of both. For an event, for either one of those events, we basically hire everyone we can get to come help just to make sure it goes smoothly. Run Into the Bull, understandably why we have DelDOT. DelDOT's been fantastic. I can say this jokingly, the first several years, DelDOT didn't want to know anything about it. And now Mike at DelDOT has been wonderful because he's like, they set the traffic lights, they do everything just to keep traffic moving. It's probably, I'll knock on wood, the best traffic Saturday of the summer because DelDOT is here in person making sure the light things are running and everything is running smoothly. The emergency networks are on there to make sure no ambulance are coming. It's very well orchestrated. Todd with the lifeguards is amazing. This is the bull run now, where they run down the beach, the cones, they stay between them. It's very well organized. Sam and, the new town manager, we will meet the day before. We'll go through it all. So it's orchestrated very nicely. Same thing with Dewey Goes Pink. It takes an army to put that event on because it's so big, and every state policeman available, the fire police, the DelDOT, the Dewey police, the Rehoboth police, and everybody else all help orchestrate that event. What we do is we keep them around afterwards because as anybody that's seen it, there's a lot of people on the streets, and we basically just take over Salisbury Street. It's grown into more of a block party for the neighbors there. They decorate their houses up, but it's closing that one street has made it much safer and allowed it to grow over the years. We're closing in on $900,000 donated over the first 9 years for Delaware's Breast Cancer Coalition. So this year, I'm sure we're guaranteed to top $1 million in 10 years, which is great.
Well, I personally think it's a great event, and and you put a lot of time, effort, and energy, and I know our own police chief and the police in town and the town manager put a lot of energy into making sure everything runs properly, and it is a well-coordinated event.
It's a great newspaper article for Dewey Beach to see such great things happening, so that's the part I like too.
Any other commissioners with questions? I've got just a formality or two to go through. So, Mr. Montgomery, your signature appears on a couple of documents relating to these events that's titled Procedures That Apply to Your Expansion. In the case of the running of the bill, for instance, the time extension is from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And in the case of the Dewey Goes Pink, it's 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. Are you familiar with these?
Yeah, there's some confusion because those were the application from 2 years ago. I think the application process changed. There's an online thing now, so I basically did them both. But it is basically the same. 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. is the bull run. 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. is the Dewey Goes Pink.
Okay, so those periods are even shorter than what's referenced here.
Right.
So all the different conditions that the town is asking for you to address, some of which were just mentioned, you intend to do that, and you understand what your
Yep,
responsibilities
police,
are.
toilets,
Yep.
all those fun things to talk about, yes.
All the paperwork it takes the government to move with.
And the reason the times are a little off is because we usually add an hour early and late for setup and breakdown. Because legally to have alcohol or anything, there's setup and breakdown.
Right, right. Okay, if Mr. Montgomery, you're done.
Should I formally ask Dale Cook to serve as the matador of the bull running right now, since it's his last year as mayor of all the years he served?
We can make it a condition of those applications.
No, I'll pass on that.
All right, so at this point, I think we'll ask if the public has any comments they wish to make relating to these two applications. Mr. Smith?
Sandra and I had a comment.
You give your
about-
name and
Jeffrey Smith, 30 C Strand, about the positive part called the kids event month. The kids event is actually a lot of fun for adults. And I think we see a lot of the north end of Dewey coming down here. So over time that can be marketed. Now probably, given I held an event at Nat Stadium, the prices have gone up for the mascots, but they were a big hit for years and years. And so that is, I think, an under-marketed thing that can really help the town, and a lot of people attend. That's pretty much it.
Thank you. No questions from Mr. Smith. Anyone else in the audience wish to be heard? So I'll ask a question at this point. I don't know the answer. The people who are following virtually can't participate in these meetings. This is not a Zoom
No.
meeting, right? Okay. All right. Well, with that, I think we'll close the public hearing. And I'll turn it back over to yourself,
all right,
Mr. Mayor.
thank you, sir. Thank you very much. I guess we're going to go to vote individually, each expansion of premises. Is there a motion to accept the running of the bull Saturday, August 21st, 2021, as the application so states, as long as the town manager and the town police chief sign off on it?
So moved.
So moved by Commissioner Jazinski and seconded by Commissioner Persinger. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any against? Any abstentions? Hearing none. Kate, it's unanimous. Is there a motion for the 10th annual Dewey Does Pink 5K and Pig Roast, Saturday, October 9th, 2021?
Motion.
From Mr. Stevens motioned and Mr. Persinger second. Should I look this way, or are you waving at me?
No, I was going to second or third or fourth, whatever.
And there's a proper motion second on the floor. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any against, say nay. Any abstentions? Hearing none, unanimous. Thank you very much, Monty. We've got one more item to go through. Is that correct, Mr.?
That's right.
Johnson?
Item 2 on the agenda involves Mr. Montgomery.
Right. Discuss and possibly vote to refer to Planning Commission applications to rezone tax map parcel number 334-20.18-150.00, located at 26 Bellevue Street, Dewey Beach, from resort residential to resort business RB2, along with the proposed ordinances to rezone said parcel and to amend the comprehensive plan map accordingly. Mr. Townsend?
That's right. So the typical process for rezoning requires an application, and I think we may, for the record, just wish to have Mr. Montgomery make an application, but this is not the opportunity for a full-fledged explanation of the developer's plans with respect to the parcel. This is simply a opportunity for the commissioners to determine whether they want to send this to Planning Commission or whether they're not interested in entertaining the question at all. I think we really have no choice other than to forward it to the Planning Commission and get a recommendation back from them. They'll conduct a public hearing, after which the commissioners will receive their recommendation and conduct its own public hearing and vote to either grant or deny the application. Just for the record, in case there are any questions, Mr. Montgomery, do you mind returning to the podium? And just for the record, indicate that it is your intention or it's your desire to apply for this rezoning. That I think it's my understanding, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the property's under contract at the present time, which gives,
Under contract to settle in September, yes.
right, which gives you the standing, if you will, to bring this application before us. Obviously, the current owner the record owner is in support of this. Yes. Okay. If you would.
Well, our intention is to try to get this rezoned and then start the process. If we're going to be able to do what we would like to do with the property, to be open by May of next year, we've got to get going. As Dale said, government moves slow. I have a partner in this named Chris Shell, who does not move slow. So we're lining up ready. We know that there'll be changes as the design and the things, and we've been working with Dawn and the town to try to cross T's, dot I's to get our parts right, but this is the start of the process. So we think, keep it brief, we think we can bring something to this town really would like to have and need. We just need to work together to get it to where we get it done, if that makes sense.
And then for the record, Mr. Montgomery, you are the owner, or you have the adjacent property under contract as well, and it's your desire to combine them and redevelop the project.
Correct. If you, to make more of a restaurant feel, you need to have a kitchen. So we need the space to make this work. It has to have a kitchen.
Not like the one that's in there now.
No comment.
Any questions from the commissioners? Mr. Persinger?
I'm sorry, let me pass it right now, went right out of my head.
While that comes to you.
I was going to motion to move this over to planning and zoning.
Second.
Well,
That's where it has to go anyhow.
Well, we don't have to hear, there's no, this is not a public hearing per se, so we don't have to hear from the public. So you could take a motion now if you wish to, but I wouldn't want to short.
so it's not an actual public hearing?
It is not.
Okay. And I would hope that we would wait on voting on the motion until we see if any other commissioners have any questions or comments. At least give the commissioners a chance to.
Mr. Persinger?
I'll see if I'll try this time. It's not so much, in part a question, I guess. I think it's important to understand what the process is. We're going to send this to the Planning and Zoning Commission, ask them for their recommendation on rezoning that one parcel from resort residential to resort business 2. And then there's this issue that you just mentioned of combining the two properties. Is that a decision that is made by the town? Is that something the commissioners would be involved in?
That would be an administrative decision made by the town. There would be requirements that would apply to any application like that, but they're not what we would think of as legislative requirements that require hearings or involve hearings and involve discretion on the part of council, or whether council wishes to impose conditions. Those are not, that process does not apply to a lot consolidation.
Okay, so, again, in terms of the process, the planning and zoning will meet, they have a public hearing, they make a recommendation. If it's a positive recommendation, it comes back to us, we have a public hearing, and then we make a judgment, final judgment on the rezoning issue.
That's right.
And then, assuming that administratively, the town then decides to combine the two properties, approve that combination, then whatever is planned there, I'm assuming the design, the plans for that would go through a full conditional use process?
I believe that's correct, yes.
Which would address, all of the concerns, I think, that were expressed by the one homeowner that raised some of those issues. And again, that process would involve the planning and zoning holding public hearings. They would make a recommendation. We again would hold a public hearing and then make a final judgment. So, as you say, government works slowly, unfortunately. There are a lot of steps to this, but I think it's good.
As I understand it
to
also,
process.
I apologize for interrupting, but as I want to open in public, it's two different processes. Initially, actually three. Initially, we sent it to planning and zoning for their recommendation. And then the commissioners,
On the rezoning?
yes.
Right.
On the rezoning separately. And then after, if it works its way through positively through the commissioner, then it goes back to planning and zoning for public hearings on the restaurant, right? Is that correct?
The conditional use process.
Yeah, there would be a conditional use application to redevelop the property. If there's an expansion of the property, it's going to involve an amendment to a conditional use permit. Any restaurant is subject to the conditional use process in Dewey Beach. So if you intend to expand a restaurant, then you have to go through that process.
I just want the applicant to
Right,
understand.
and the public.
It's not all just one time at the planning and zoning. It's going to be a couple times back and forth at planning and zoning. We tend to forget that sometimes. Go ahead, I'm sorry, I apologize.
No, that's really all. I just wanted to make sure that we had clearly in mind what the process is, and so we have a common understanding of what that process has to be.
And we're looking at this as a linear process, that it's dependent upon one step, or is it that multiple things could happen at the same time?
Yeah.
I think
The property needs to be rezoned in order to be consolidated. I mean, there are exceptions to that, but we can't consolidate the two adjacent parcels if it would result in split zoning. You can do that sometimes when you've got much bigger parcels and there's some justification for that, but that is not what the developer wants anyway. So if we're going to consolidate these parcels, they need to have RB2 zoning. So that's step one, and it involves amending our planning map, comprehensive plan map. So I refer to it in the agenda as two ordinances. They're combined for the time being. I'm going to confirm that it's fine for the two to be combined, but the concepts are amending the map, changing it from residential to commercial or RB2, and then actually applying the RB2 zoning district to it versus some other business zone that could be applied. So that's what this initial process is about, is the rezoning only.
And we have to make sure it's done in the proper fashion, the proper set of circumstances, because, if somebody then comes back later on and says you didn't follow your own regulations, then it starts all over again.
That's right. At one point, it looked like Mr. Jasinski had a question.
My thing was really just to make sure that the applicant understands that how many times this is going to have to go kind of across the net is going to, lengthen out the process just by the nature of it. And it sounds like you do
Well-
now or you did.
No, we know, and Dawn's been wonderful to work with, as is Bill, helping us try to eliminate any unnecessary time so that we don't, and that's why we got we don't settle till September, and obviously if we don't get approved, we're gonna not settle anyway, so we're just trying to get an idea, move it so that we can, know if we're gonna get to the settlement table or not. And we look forward to the day to sit here and have the public here and show all the bells and whistles of our plans and thoughts, because I know that when rumors go out, there's some negativity at first, but I think when people see what we're planning, and we're certainly willing to adjust and work, I think there's going to be an awful lot of public support.
I'm sorry,
No, go right ahead.
one other point, should we talk a little bit about what the schedule might be? I mean, I think planning and zoning has scheduled a hearing, I believe, at this point. And I don't know exactly when that is. And I don't know if it predates our meeting. I mean, what is the potential schedule that we may be faced with in terms of getting this, some judgment on whether or not to do this rezoning?
There is a tentative planning and zoning meeting set for August. I believe this is the 13th.
I think the potential of entertaining this application is, part of, it's on their radar. In addition to maybe something else, I'm not.
But my question, I'm assuming they do that on the 13th and they come out with a positive recommendation that then has to come back to us. We have to
we can
notice
vote on
and
it on the
schedule
13th.
a public hearing. In terms of the schedule, you need to meet, you're talking about settlement in September. Is that going to fit within our schedule?
Well, we can notice our public hearing in advance of receiving the recommendation from the Planning Commission. That is something that can be done. So there can be, in response to your question, a bit of an overlap, but just on these notice requirements.
Okay.
Yeah, and the planning and zoning will understand, and we're not recommending one way or the other, we're just forwarding them for their recommendation.
That's right.
Sometimes things get sent to them and they think the commissioners want this, let's move forward in one direction. We want them to look at it and decide on their own.
That's right. And in response to that and some comments made by Mr. Persinger, the comments that we received from the member of the public would typically be taken up at a later process during the design phase of the project, and that a positive vote to send this to the Planning Commission is not an endorsement of any future plans the developer may come with. In fact, this is not the appropriate time for us even to be considering what the developer has specifically in mind. Those considerations are brought to the table at a later hearing.
I know the glacial movement of government frustrates some of the commissioners, but you have to understand it has to be done a certain way.
Why do you got to look at me when you say that? So, Mr. Montgomery, you said that you intended to close in September on the property or properties. Is the contract you have, does it expire at the end of September, or does it have the ability in case the timeline moves?
It's got the ability to move.
Okay.
We've got a soft date in September.
Okay.
I mean, common sense, we just wanted them to be able to continue operating through Labor Day, through September, and we knew we needed some time to get our ducks in the row. So if we're moving along and things are looking like, they're positive, we'll extend it. If it's running into roadblocks, we'll do what we have to do.
Okay.
Okay? Town attorney, town manager, excuse me.
Mr. Mayor, so the assistant town manager, who's not here, said that it would also have to go to the Office of State Planning at some point, is that correct?
Yes,
Okay.
because we're changing the zoning map.
You just wanted everybody.
Right.
So some of that can be done at the same time, but most of it is plodding along, unfortunately.
They don't want to give an answer before before council's made their commitment to go forward. So
Right.
oftentimes what we would do is grant, you wouldn't be sending anything to State Planning Commission that was denied. So if there's a grant of the approval, then it's subject to state planning's.
So now's the time to make the motion to advance it on to P and Z if you so want to.
Motion to send it to P and Z.
All right.
Second.
And motion and a proper motion and second from Mr. Bauer and Mr. Jazinski. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any against say nay. Any abstentions? Unanimous. Thank you, Monty. Item number 3. Discuss and possibly vote to amend the fiscal year 2022 budget to increase the Dewey Beach Police Department liability insurance from $1 million to $3 million. And I'd like first, the chief is here and Mr. Brady is here, but I'd like first to show how this came about. Go to the town manager, and he can, because it sort of started with him and he and I talking, and then it moved into you and the chief and Mr. Brady. So go ahead, you start the discussion.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. It really came from our financial person, Sheena Gossett. She actually brought this to my attention, and I talked to the chief and Mr. Brady about it. And given the current climate in the country today with law enforcement, we're trying to be as proactive as possible. The chief's looked at the Warren report. I've looked at the Warren report. We've been aggressive in getting training done that Captain Warren has pointed out to us. We've also adapted and gone with some new devices, Bowler app being one of those, with compliance with very minimal amount of pain. But when we looked at our liability insurance, right now we have $1 million with the liability insurance. We're paying approximately $50,000 a year for that. We have a $100,000 deductible. We budgeted $75,000 this year for liability insurance. If we were to go to $3 million this year for liability insurance, the deductible would still be $100,000, but we would have $3 million of insurance at $100,000. So we would have to take approximately $25,000 from somewhere else in our budget, and that's why I asked for a budget amendment. I would ask that that come from our transfer tax, and the reason I would ask that, right now we're at about $700,000 at transfer tax, and we budgeted $735, so we're just short of that. But our finance person today told me that she feels that we'll be at least at $125,000 plus on top of the $702,000 that we are currently at transfer tax. So I believe that we'll make $735 very easily, and then there will be the extra $25,000 to use to get to $3 million worth of liability insurance. I hope that makes sense. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, I just have one, I think a statement, maybe a question to Sheena. We just had a house sold and closed in Dewey Beach for $9.1 million. Has that tax, 1.5%, been added to the suggested income that we might have, Sheena?
When did that close?
I just read the article yesterday, so.
think it was-
When-
It closed in April.
Oh, it hasn't closed yet?
Come over to you guys yet, the transfer
Oh, it closed in
tax.
April?
It's all in April.
So,
We
haven't
haven't
seen
got
it.
the transfer tax yet, which will be.
so that wasn't included in your estimate of,
No, sir.
okay, so, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, that's a chief. Could I ask the chief if he has any additional comments on the liability?
That's the process. That's the process how I got involved in it. They asked me for my thoughts. Spoke to our law enforcement counsel, talked to him. I've been watching, through the International Association of Chiefs of Police, what's going on across the country, as far as settlements and liability for police departments, and some of the settlements and the amount of claims have been way, way, way above that. And after seeing that, when they asked me what my thoughts were, I think it's prudent for the town to consider upping the amount to protect us, so we would, God forbid something happened, we wouldn't have to liquidate any town assets or like another town ran into. I thought it was very prudent, and when I discussed that with our lawyer, police counsel, for his thoughts, I thought we should really look at it and bring it before council.
Anything else?
Did you want to ask Mr. Brady to,
If there was any questions, or Mr. Brady, if you have anything to add?
Mr. Brady, would you like to make a couple comments here? Sure. I would appreciate that. Mr. Brady is a former town attorney and is now the attorney for the police department in the town.
Good evening, John Brady, police attorney, town prosecutor. The world changed with George Floyd's death, but it had changed in Delaware before that. There had been cases out of Dewey Beach where we've had to pay $25,000 for an improper arrest, $50,000, and those were below our deductible, so we had to come up with the money. But most recently, in Delaware, the town of Cheswold had a judgment on an employment case with a police officer, and it bankrupted the town, literally. When I looked at the 1 million after it was brought to my attention, I have 2 million in case somebody falls on my driveway. And I looked at 1 million for Dewey, and I didn't think it could be enough if we had, what's that song from American Idol? You had a bad day? And we don't want to do that. The chief, through the Warren report, and the town manager have worked very hard to train the seasonals. I came in and trained the seasonals, talked to the full-time officers, doing everything that's reasonable and prudent. But you look at some of the things that have happened in adjacent towns. If I was the Ocean City police attorney after those arrests on the boardwalk 2 weekends ago, I'd be really scared. So, out of abundance of caution, I started looking at some judgments. And the city of Wilmington has been paying out $2 to $3 million a year in what they call police brutality cases. We have one that's out there, but I think that this is a reasonable and prudent way to approach it. And that's why when it was brought to my attention by the chief and the town manager, and I met with them, with Ms. Gossett, that I thought it was appropriate to do, being proactive, even with all the training that's been done, that we've seen, as we said, we don't worry about the Superior Court in Sussex. And why I say that is because there's only been 2 judgments over $1 million in Sussex County, but they're not filing them in Sussex County. They're filing them in the U.S. District Court. They're bringing in out-of-state attorneys. And the juries in Newcastle County are giving more money for claims than I ever thought that I would see in my lifetime. I was admitted to Delaware Bar in 1991. In 30 years, it's getting higher and higher, the judgment amounts. And that's why I commend the town manager for his proactive efforts in order to protect the town.
Thank you, Mr. Brady, I appreciate that. I want to reiterate that this also was suggested as a budget item change, a line item change, because of the auditor, correct, town manager?
It was his opinion that it should be done this way.
Okay. Any questions, Mr. Persinger?
Yeah, a couple of questions. If I'm reading this right, it looks like our annual premium for liability coverage has declined by about 50% over the last 4 years. Just wondering why that's the case.
From 2017 to 2021, is that what you're, so
Yeah.
from 107,000 down to 49,000?
Yeah.
Part of that's been, and I haven't been here, but I would assume that the police department has had less incidents that have taken place, and that we've also recently changed to the DFID from,
Strategic Insurance Partners as our broker.
sorry, I didn't have all.
So it's in
that.
part experience rated then,
Yeah.
so, okay, okay. Then the question is, in terms of, you said the auditors have recommended this is how we handle it. And I'm not sure quite what that means. Did we not, in our current budget, do we not have a surplus? I thought I recalled having a surplus, and I don't have the numbers in front of me.
We do have a surplus. It was just the auditor's recommendation to make sure that, for full transparency, that since we have such an excess of transfer tax, that we do this adjustment to show that we aren't just taking the money and moving it. We're compensating and making sure everyone understands where anything's coming from.
In other words, they recommended an official change in the budget,
Yes, sir.
the written budget.
Well, I think that's a good idea, but I mean, if we had, $25,000 or more in terms of surplus, could we not just increase the expenditure line where this would appear, and then reduce the surplus by that amount?
We could have, it was just strictly a way to, make sure everyone was fully informed of everything.
Okay, well, I mean, I think that you could do it that way and still fully inform everybody. Or alternatively, you could simply increase your estimate for transfer tax by $25,000 and increase your expenditure line item by $25,000 to cover this. Either way would be fine, and, and then I think that would be clear and transparent.
Mr. Stevens?
No, I agree with Gary on the increase in both the transfer tax and insurance expense. I assume that they're looking for the $3 million mark, so it's increased by $50,000. Is that not 25? The question I have, is it the same carrier? And the only reason why I ask is because Mr. Brady alluded to the fact that there was a case outstanding, and I was just wondering about all the cases that have already been filed, and whether the insurance company would go back to that period of time.
All we changed was brokers, and due to the town's history, we are in a kind of a pool, insurance, who is offering the insurance.
It's a co-op.
Yeah, they know that of our history, and the broker is hoping that if we continue with the great moves that we've been making, we can continue to move to get better offers for in the future, and bring our premium back down.
Just one more question. Final question is, the deductible per occurrence or in the aggregate of claims up to the $3 million?
The deductible is aggregate. The policy limits are, it's the same per occurrence. We have an occurrence amount of, right now, 1 million, but it's annualized as 1 million also. So if we hit that 1 million at the one time, we're done. In the future, if we go to 3 million, and we can hit, if we get stuck with 1 millions, we're good.
Thank you.
Mr. Jazinski?
I'd just kind of add a little bit to what Commissioner Stevens was saying. I don't know if you guys have already checked this. Fred, you might be familiar with it. We just want to make sure that the existing coverage has tail coverage, so that when you switch the policy, sometimes they make you have the policy still be in force, even though the event was a prior. We just want to make sure that there's tail coverage on the existing policy when we change to the new policy, so that we don't have a gap for the existing claims. Sometimes that's an issue when you change policies.
Yeah, but we're not planning on changing policies. We're just planning on increasing our coverage.
Correct.
So
okay.
we're with the same carrier.
Okay, so it's not actually a change of policy then? Okay.
Any other questions? Oh, Mr.
No, I mean,
Powell?
it's one of those things, it's insurance that you hope and pray that you never have to use it, but, better safe than sorry, right? That's my opinion of it.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, is there a motion
Motion to approve the additional funds for upping our policy limits?
and it includes the change in the budget? Which version were you interested in? The one that Mr. Persinger suggested, or the one that the town manager and town finance suggested?
Doesn't really matter to me one way or the other.
Well, you have to make a noise call.
I don't know. I like the one that our town manager put forward.
Changing the income from the transfer tax, lowering that and raising the expenditure on the line item for insurance.
Right.
That's the motion that's made. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second from Commissioner Stevens. Any other further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any against, say nay. Any abstentions? No. Unanimous approval. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next item, need to move on. We're an hour into this already. This next item is the consultant report. And I said consultant report just for my own terminology here. You want to introduce our,
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, as you know, we voted for CTC Net out of the 3 different consultants that were proposed. This is Ron Evans. He is one of the engineers with CTC Net. Sean Thompson is our primary point of contact. He is on vacation, so Ron is down here in place. I took Ron around a little bit earlier today, showed him the 5 poles throughout the town. He is somewhat familiar with our background, how the poles got here. He's also familiar with the recent protests that took place, and Representative Speaker Schwarzkopf and Senator Lopez, and how they have been working with Verizon. He is also familiar with AT&T, who contacted us in the last 2 weeks and advised that they also want to put poles up on the dunes, but they have been very proactive. They contacted Dawn Hinks, they have talked to Jim Dedes and I, and now they are talking to Ron. So with that, Mayor, I'll turn it back.
Go right ahead.
I'll turn it over to you, Ron.
Thank you for having me here. You have a very beautiful beachfront community, and CTC wants to help you with your wireless ordinance.
I would ask you just to keep the mic sort of near you.
Sure.
You just speak into the mic, yeah.
So you have a very beautiful beachfront community, and CTC is excited to work with you with your wireless ordinance. We had a phone call earlier this week, and Jim Dedes had sent some bullet points that he wanted me to speak about with you folks regarding your some wireless ordinance issues that you had. So I have a spreadsheet up there highlighted in green certain areas, and there's possibly 5 or 6 different bullet items that I could go through, and then we could talk about the small wireless facilities that you have that have sprung up throughout your community.
Can you see? Not really.
Can't read it. Might turn it a little bit towards the audience and cut the light off if we.
So the first tab would be the preferable designs tab.
Go ahead. That's good.
Okay.
Just don't stand up.
Preferable designs tab. So we had a statement regarding design standard for stealth technology. So here I put together some slides that are actually from ordinances that we've helped other communities within Maryland with. So as you see, there are certain designs that we can come up with rather than the wood pole with the antennas sticking out the top or around the sides of it. The first one, design 1, you can see if you have a street light or without a street light, there are designs out there that can be cylindrical in nature that can conceal all that equipment that you see, including the antennas at the top, midway, as well as the equipment at the bottom. We have other designs here that you see to the right with an abutment at the top for the antenna, as well as a cabinet, your power meter, and your disconnect. Or if you choose a larger cabinet at the bottom, instead of having cabinets right there at 10 feet, they seem to be somewhat of an eyesore. If we page down a little bit more, there's some more designs. So on the left, you see another design with an antenna abutment at the top and a large cabinet below. I see a lot of those that are being deployed throughout the area. The one to the right is one that you seem to see a lot, however, with a wooden pole with the antenna abutment out and the radio equipment cabinet directly on the pole to the side. So there are designs out there that can be used. Kate, if you could open up the small cell concealments PDF and go to page 9. So these are being deployed throughout the company, throughout the country. Raycap is a major stealth provider. And as you can see, currently, you tend to see the 4G antenna canister at the top of the pole, and then you'll see the 5G radios and antennas flush mounted against the pole. There are designs out there where this can be concealed within the pole, the public doesn't see it, and the equipment can be co-located within the pole structure or at the bottom. If we go to the next page, page 10. Now, I know we spoke about co-location. You can ask the carrier when they replace a pole for it to be a co-locatable pole. By that I mean you could fit at least 2 or 3 carriers within that pole. It will get larger in diameter because you are fitting more equipment for the carriers in there. But you can see there are multi-operator poles out there. Usually each canister is 5 feet in height, so that allows enough of the antenna infrastructure for each carrier in there. So if you allow the carrier up to 50 feet at the top of the antenna height, I know right now you have it for 35 feet.
Right.
This will allow co-location. And you can ask for RF analysis or paperwork from the carrier why they cannot co-locate. Prove to us that they can't co-locate. You want co-location because it's going to lessen the amount of all these poles popping up. So I think this is a good idea.
Question for you.
Yes.
You mentioned 35 feet and 50 feet. At 35 feet, you can do no co-location with this at all? And how much, and can you co-locate 3 carriers at 50 feet? Is that what you're saying?
You could up to 3. As you go lower and lower height, your radius of coverage gets smaller and smaller and actually defeats the purpose of the small cell. So if you allow them up to 50 feet, which is the limit of small cell under the federal statute, you allow them more height, and then you can co-locate more antennas and equipment within that cylindrical structure. And if they cannot co-locate, tell us why you can't co-locate. Submit RF reports, propagation maps, so that as a consultant, I could look at that and see if you are, in fact, telling the truth or just saying, I can't co-locate because it's not good enough for my technology. Prove to us that you can't do that. Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, question. If you had 3 vendors co-locating in a single pole, would their equipment all be at the same height, or would they be stacked? And if they're stacked, does it matter who's at the top of the pole?
Well, usually the first one to come in to replace that pole would take the top height, and then the rest of them would follow suit. But usually, at the most, you'd probably get 2 carriers, because with the 4G technology, they need those radios in those cabinets. So you folks see all those large cabinets that are, flush mounted to the pole. That's the radios for the 4G technology, because it works like that. With the 5G technology, especially the millimeter waves, which are those large boxes that you see underneath, they're gray in color, they may be tilted out somewhat. The radios are built within the antennas, so they don't need that large enclosure. You also have some small cells here that are just 5G. So you have those antennas at the top and no radio enclosures.
So again,
with this
I'm
type of
sorry.
technology, there is a way to have them co-locate without having, a pole every 100 feet.
So is there an advantage of being on top as opposed to being lower
You get
down?
more coverage, more of a radius of coverage,
Okay,
yes.
okay.
But as you bring them down 5 feet to 5 feet, you're at 45 and 40. They're at 35 right now, and they're operating fine at that height.
I have a question.
Sure.
When a utility company puts in a pole, we have a 35-foot height limit. Does that apply to poles? Then how did all those big silver ones get on Route 1?
Because Route 1 is, number one, has been there forever, and it's
Right.
and completely operated by the state, not
Right.
by us.
Right. They're all Delmarva poles. Yeah. I mean, they're probably 60 feet at least.
Usually we see in ordinances where they swap out an existing utility pole, it's 10% of the existing height of the structure or more, or up, that's the limit, or they allow them up to 50 feet.
50, right?
There was another bullet statement asked about review of permit applications by consultants should be included in the building application costs. That's under application types, Kate. We could go to that, and I could just speak to that a little bit. So there's no fee structure set right now. So what we would propose is you have different applications depending on what type of modification it is for the small cell facility. Co-location, we would use the existing definition in your ordinance. New would be a proposal to install a new structure where none exists for any wireless facilities on the new structure, and a replacement is a replacement of an existing structure. The cost associated with the consulting costs for reviewing that application and approving it, and then providing a recommendation, that could be directly rolled into the cost that you have for the applicant for their build permit for
And the
that.
service that we've contracted with you for,
Right.
that bill can be rolled in to
Absolutely.
the cost.
And we could come up with that fee structure with you and negotiate that, and that could directly be rolled in to the BP then. So it would be no, money out of your pocket or anything.
And the list of what we need to do is getting longer and longer, and you're gonna make sure we get it done, right?
Absolutely. That's what we're here for.
Very good.
The next discussion point, and we all spoke about this during the week, was the 50-foot distance from the dune ends. So we believe that that setback is correct the way you have it. But what we were talking about is, as you bring the wireless facility back 50 feet from the dune end, you will encounter some buildings there, or the houses. They will block the signal because it's a line of sight technology. We would then propose to allow them to go up to that 50-foot maximum there. So you bring them back 50 feet, they're not on the dunes anymore, but you allow them up to 50 feet, up to 50 feet.
And that's something that we would have to, Fred, we would have to change Mr. Townsend, we would have to change our regulations, something we need to do
I
again.
believe we would.
I'm sorry.
And then what we would propose is for any type of replacement of a new structure, we would ask for the RF propagation maps and studies to prove that they need to site that facility there. So then, as consultants, we would look over that and make sure everything is correct with what they're stating. As well as EME or maximum permissible emission reports. I think the reports that Verizon submitted are correct. There's a lot of erroneous data in them that I spoke with Bill about. So what we would propose is, there's a federal mandate where there's a certain amount of exposure limit allowable, and whether or not you could ask the applicant to provide that information. It depends on the frequency used and the powers that are used, whether or not they need to give you that information. It's been common practice that we see that all the applicants give us this information already. They don't give us a hassle for it. So you can ask for it.
Question, how far do they have to be from someone's window? Like, we have like the one at Gary's, which is 12 feet from somebody's bedroom.
Well, that's why we would need a maximum permissible exposure report from the applicant. Because what they do there is, they would give them the power output of the antenna, and as consultants, we would make sure that that's correct. There's calculations involved, okay? And the height at where the antennas are. Once all that gets calculated with the vendor that they use for that, it comes up with a number and a distance. So they will tell you from the antennas on the top and the distance what the exposure limit is and the percentage of exposure. And depending on that, they need to put placards up there, red, yellow, or blue, depending on what the exposure limit is. So if they're next to a window, 10 feet from a window, and they measure it, You have the proof right there, they cannot co-locate there, they cannot locate there, and that's it, end of discussion. So that's something that we could put into your ordinance, to ask for that type of paperwork, as well as we get that paperwork from our applicants and have it stamped by a professional engineer at the end. So that binds it, and then you know you have a document. Small wireless facilities utilizing millimeter wave technology. So this is just very high frequencies. You have many of them here. Those are the sites where you just have those large gray antennas that I spoke about with no equipment located on the pole. The radios and the equipment is bedded into the antennas. Those need maximum permissible exposure limit reports as mandated by the FCC. So they should have submitted them. If they did, and those were the ones that Verizon submitted, those are erroneous. Because I looked at those and the power output, and it's just, yeah, it's in very poor taste, that report. So that's something that I know would ease the public as well as everybody here with the exposure limits. So that needs to be asked for, and they need to provide that. And as consultants, we would look over that and make sure those documents are part of our recommendation for approval to build a wireless facility. Discuss the current 100-foot distance from existing utility and wireless poles. I think we spoke about that a little bit, and Bill, you said that you had measured some areas out there where I think we may have to lessen that a bit, correct? Maybe to like 75 feet or 50 feet. We can revisit that, maybe do a couple site visits and do some more measurements to come up with a better number. Because if it's too large, you don't want to be seen to be prohibitive with allowing them in a right of way to select where they want to go within that distance. Discuss possible change in the current height limit for wireless poles up to 50 feet. We spoke about that. Changing out the boxes of existing wireless communication sites. You folks sent me the construction drawings for those modifications that they did with the antennas at the top and some equipment within the existing equipment enclosures. Those were all done within the specifications of your ordinance, including the antennas at the top. What we propose, I believe you have a 28 cubic foot maximum pole equipment attachment limit, those large boxes on the poles. We propose reducing that to 12 cubic feet. So that will lessen that large box on the pole. And then if they need to go larger than that, allow them to put a larger box around the bottom of the pole in line with it. So we'll get rid of that large, small dorm refrigerator looking equipment cabinet on the pole, right? Make it smaller, and if they can't make it smaller, tell them you could put it ground mounted in line with the pole, and you're in your total right to do that. So we will propose that as well. Discuss recommendation of local distances from existing residential and business structures. Kate, if you could go back to the spreadsheet and under setbacks. I will bring that up as well. So you see, if you could go up a little bit. So we propose for residential dwellings to be set back at least 30 feet from the nearest residential dwelling, and for commercial, 20. This is a common best practice that we see in a lot of ordinance work that we help with. So that's the usual distances that we've seen in many municipalities' ordinances. Yes, sir.
Yeah, so our setbacks are 18 feet, I think, and I'm not sure, in 20 feet maybe, possibly. So I'm wondering if we're going to have a problem that we just don't have the building set back far enough, especially a lot of the non-conforming type of buildings to be able to do anything. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that we could look into further and come up with a better approach to that,
Okay.
I believe.
Excuse me one second.
Yes, sir.
Kate, are you able to get all this on the sound on the?
Audio.
Yeah, can you hear him all right? Okay. We're not doing what the signs say, we're not sitting up straight and speaking into the microphone, so.
So the last point I have was the town's consideration of location of wireless poles on Route 1 as a preference to the side streets. And Mayor, we spoke about this for a little bit today. As you move away from the beach, right, and you go to Route 1, which is what, a couple hundred feet, they're going to get taller because they need to get over all of those obstacles of the buildings and everything. The main purpose of a small wireless facility is to put your coverage and that technology that everyone wants right where you need it. That offloads those large towers that you have along Route 1 or the water tower where a lot of the current co-locator are. So you need that small wireless facility right where you need it. Moving it back is just going to defeat the purpose of it. And then they're going to get taller because they need that line of sight technology to get over there. So it's
So we
somewhat
end
of
up
a
with-
middle ground.
So we end up with a choice of either where they are now or further back on the side street and a little taller.
And then the limit for a small wireless facility is 50 feet. But once you go above that, it's not a small wireless facility anymore. It becomes a macro cell, and then there's a whole other myriad of issues with that. So it's a give and a take, you know, for all of this. It's happening all over, you know, I think the best way to go is with the co-locatable stealth technology, the EME reports, and the RF-related maps and propagations. That way, you know where they need to go is in a true aspect, or if they're just being erroneous and facetious, like they did with all the poles, you know, at the end of the dunes.
So what I'm concerned with now, what bothers me is that, you know, I personally thought that we could move them back to the highway. It doesn't look like we can get that and get the proper line of sight reception that we thought we could get from the highway. So they may be correct about that. But there's negotiations going on now that with our state representatives and the different carriers about where things can be moved from and to, et cetera. And I'm not going to get into that, but we need to get the town manager and you into that situation. So you explain to them, to our representatives, what we need, what we want, so we're not at odds with our representatives.
Right.
Yeah.
And the more factual data, engineering data that we get from the carriers to look at and page through, the better it'll be. Because then, you know, you folks know that it needs to be here, why does it need to be here, and what's the objective of the site being there?
Yeah, and
Not just
we don't
throwing
want
like darts.
we don't
on
want to
the
be
board.
at odds with our representatives. They're doing us they're helping the town move these poles now, and what we get has to go along with what you recommend also. So that's what we need to do, Bill. You know, we need to combine their efforts somehow. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I think that's all I had. Any other questions from
Can
anyone?
we turn the lights on for a minute and?
I want to drill down a bit and kind of go back to the stealth technology, the 35, 50 foot, and the co-location when you put these all together. So if you said part of it's them getting the height, and as you move it 50 foot back from the dune, you want the 50 feet in height so that it can get over the remaining houses on the street, basically,
Correct.
is what you're saying, right? So you've got to go to 50 feet, and then the stealth technology is co-locatable, right? You got your 50-foot pole, and there are 3 carriers who probably want to do applications eventually here. will it work at a 50-foot pole with one pole to kind of go 1, 2, 3 carriers? Or are they all going to say they need their own because carrier number 3 is between height 35 and 40 feet or something like
This is
that?
why you ask them for the RF type propagations and maps to prove, to say, well, you have to go at 50. Not everyone needs to go at 50.
Right,
You
okay.
know, we think you should go at 45, prove it. Well, I can't go at 45. Show me proof that you can't go.
So
at
you're
that.
saying you're basically saying it is possible with a 50-foot pole to potentially get 3 on there and make
It's
and prove it out?
possible, but the base is going to be really large
Mm-hmm.
because if they're all putting up 4G and 5G is no problem. You could fit all that within the cylindrical nature of the pole. But once you start throwing 4G in there, that little bit older technology where you need those radios and those cabinets,
Mm-hmm.
that ground-mounted concealment canister is going to get larger and larger and larger. So you may get 2, 3. You know, it's going to be quite large.
Okay.
But, you know, 2 is better than having, you know, 2 poles 100 feet from each other on the same end of the street.
Right, okay.
Mr. Zolper?
Thanks, Mayor. Could you explain what you've been in communication with AT&T about? And I feel, Mayor, the way AT&T has reached out to us is much better than the way it was working with Verizon.
Right. I think they had spoken with Jim directly, and Jim had told them that you folks have a consultant now, and to speak with them. And he's told them about what Verizon did and how your setback now is 50 feet from the end of the dune. You want some type of concealment technology, and for it to be co-locatable. I spoke with them. They're very open to working with the town of Dewey Beach and finding a common medium in order to site their facilities here. They actually sent me some photos of work that they did in Rehoboth Beach with some stealth sites. I had sent those pictures in earlier today, but I think we'll have a more favorable outcome dealing with AT&T on this whole venture rather than what happened with Verizon. They seem
And
much
I
more
want to
favorable.
emphasize that we're not saying one company is better or worse than the other. We're not
Correct.
saying that in any way, shape, or form. We're just saying that there's been confusion. We're going to try to straighten that out with all the companies involved, and we're trying to get everybody to work together. And that's why we have the town manager and the consultant working together and getting this straightened out for everybody's benefit.
That's the way it would that's the way it's going to work, working together towards a common goal rather than being at each other's throats and fighting about it, because it's never going to get worked out that way. I think this way is the best way to go, and I'm sure we'll have a common goal between everyone.
Right. I think we've kind of run this one through the bill here, Bill. Anything
Sort
else?
of blends into the next item.
Say what?
Sort of blends into the next
Yeah,
item.
right, yeah. Yeah, anyway, anything else? Anything else? Does any commissioners have any further questions? Does anybody in the audience have any, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, it's just saying thank you.
Oh, okay. Anybody in the audience have any questions? Okay, well, Ron, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me. And,
We really appreciate you.
glad to
Made
come
me feel
back.
better about it.
glad to come back again and help you all
All
out
right.
again. Thank you so much.
Hey, Ron, if you could stay for this next item.
Absolutely.
You probably have some good input on it.
Paul, you talking about item number 5?
Yeah, we moved 9 up to 5.
Yeah, that's it.
Oh, so that was the section.
Yeah, we just hadn't done 4 yet. We kind of got
Yeah, but
out of order.
at the request, I thought we did that in the beginning when we changed, I apologize, maybe I'm wrong, but I thought when we changed things around, you all understood it. And I should have said it, the town manager asked me to eliminate number 4 and asked to move it to next month's agenda.
I didn't know that.
I'm sorry,
That-
Mr. Persinger informed me a little bit earlier that, what about that one? Yeah. I'm sorry. You know, the town manager would like it to go on next month's agenda.
Well, if I could add on to this last thing that was, that I had brought up to you. One of the thoughts, and you could probably give us some input on it. Right now, the process is Verizon, AT&T, they come to us one at a time. I want to pull here, I want to pull here. And so it's almost a piecemeal way of doing it. And I know every time, we say no to something, they have to go back and re-engineer something. And my thought would be, since we're 1 mile long town, could you give us 3 options of how you can engineer this town in one, one cohesive way, looking at favorable outcomes, is it the highway, is it the street, is it the dune, I think they need to give us something and just build it as one whole system.
What
as
you
opposed
can
to one
ask
whole thing.
for and what we ask for from a lot of municipalities is their annual plan. Every year, we have them submit to us all the new sites where they want to locate them, the addresses, the coordinates,
Right.
and what sites within your municipality need to be upgraded or modified.
Right.
So you have that finish line you see with all the sites that they want to either build or modify.
Right. I mean, at some point, if I could introduce you to Bonnie Metz and, let's try to come up with all 20 streets as opposed to them every week coming up with, hey, I need one here, I got to upgrade this equipment here. Do it all once and just do it right.
Another thing what we could do for you folks, we could set up a citing portal, because I think a lot of your applications you just get via paper. We could set up a citing portal, which we do for our clients, where the applicant would actually go in and enter all the pertinent data that we will go through and make sure you folks want to know. They'll put it in the applicant portal. We could download it into an application and ask for the construction drawings, the MPE reports, the specs on all the antennas and the equipment. We put all that application together. We could email it to you folks or upload it to your town hall website for the public to see
I think
and
that
to
would be
look
good.
at. And then we go back and forth with the applicant. If something is incorrect or erroneous, we send requests for information out to them. So you have this rapport back and forth. And until we get all our ducks in a row and everything that we seem is, efficient, the application doesn't go anywhere.
Right.
But once you get an application in for a small wireless facility, there's a shot clock involved. So you have to get that first RFI out within 10 days. If it's a macro site, it's 30 days. So there's some play there, but it's a structured type of situation going on, and I think that would benefit you folks a lot.
And I
that way.
think on their end too, they don't know what we're going to approve. For example, they're under the impression we're never going to get higher than 35 feet. So that's what they're building, that's how they're looking at doing their build out based on what they think
If
we're
you
going to
allow a
approve.
little, up to 50, you'll have less polls from that provider.
We want to get
putting
these
in.
things out by the,
Right.
in September, October, we're going to need to make a decision. They got to put them somewhere.
And ahead of time, so they know they can.
Right, so if we, like in the next meeting, if we have something on there to
That's
approve a
correct.
small cell ordinance and the concealment, if you could help us write something like that, they can come back to us and say, okay, I'm gonna get this one off of Clayton Street, and it's gonna go here,
Right.
and this one's gonna go up, halfway up the street, it's gonna be on Delmarva's pool, but that pool's probably 35 feet. But, if they need to put a new
Absolutely.
pole in the same spot and make it go higher, but that's what I mean, it's really just a piecemeal approach that they all use, and there's gotta be a better way to do it. And,
And
do
there
it,
is.
do it as just a cohesive, here's my whole map, it's 1 mile. I mean, it's not like it's not like the city of Wilmington or something.
Exactly.
So you ought to be able to give us one plan of, this is how many poles I need, this is where I need them at, this is the height.
And they're not going to build them all at once.
Right.
You just want to see what their plan
But
is.
we need to give them a unified plan from the town is what we will or won't
Yeah,
accept.
they need something from us as
They
well
know
as we
ahead
need
of time,
something
yeah.
from them, right?
Thank you. Let's move on to the next item. Next item is, item number 5, actually. Discuss and possibly vote to develop new requirements for construction site protection to deter ground runoff from building site. This item was requested by Commissioner Jazinski, and basically it's about sending to P&Z and asking them to have set up requirements for the runoff cloth. That's
Yeah.
Mr. Jazinski, you take it from
Yeah,
there.
so, right now we don't have silt fencing requirements in town. When you think about the fact that we're starting to embark on a lot of these sewer repairs, which you just can't have all that stuff flowing into the sewers. We've got a lot of bay frontage. We've got people on the lakes at the north end of town. There's a lot of places where construction runoff can do a lot of damage. It's kind of standard to ask people doing a new build to do this type of thing. It seems kind of normal. And the request is really that P&Z just, look at an amendment to our code to institute a requirement to do that. I'm not putting on the spot, but if Ms. Hinks has any comments about it, it's fine too.
Yes, I do.
Well, why don't you come up and, by the microphone? And speak into the mic, say who you are and who you're representing.
I am the short Dawn Hinks, building official for the town of Dewey Beach. Concerning grading, when it comes to new home construction, our Dewey code requires that I or the town take care of zoning laws as well as floodplain laws. Excuse me. From there, once those have all been met, then the plans are sent over to Sussex County for their plan review and inspection, so forth, that would eventually come once the plans are approved. With that, Sussex County has, as part of their permit process, that any lot that has more than 5,000 square feet disturbance, then that particular project must go to the Sussex County or Sussex Conservation District for their approval, which requires the silt fence around. Many of our lots are less than 5,000 square feet or right at that very edge. So whether the county has forwarded those applicants over to the Sussex Conservation District, it does not appear that way because many of the homes do not have the silt fences around. And that does not include, let's say if there's an addition to some existing home or something like that. But that's the county rules. And I know I've been questioned by Rehoboth why we don't have some sort of rule when it comes to those silt fence, because they apparently have a lot of folks that are all up in arms over that because of those issues. But that's the county's rule. So perhaps that gives you a little bit of
I
background.
appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
So, go ahead, Mr. Person.
Well, I just have a question. Is this issue something that's appropriate for planning and zoning? Is this really a zoning question, or is it something else?
So my chair is failing, as yours has, by the way, so I don't know who's going to drop next.
I feel your pain.
I'm losing standing.
Telephone books back
I wouldn't go so far as to say that it's inappropriate to send something to the Planning Commission, but Planning Commission's jurisdiction is invoked when we're contemplating a zoning code amendment or other matters. But in this case, we have a building construction chapter, chapter 21, which I think would be an appropriate place to examine whether we can beef that language up to do what it is that Mr. Jasinski is proposing, which is to impose more justifiably onerous restrictions on
I'm
construction.
going to interrupt you for a minute. Would it, just to move things along, would it be better to send it to P&Z or send it to you?
I don't think you'd have to wait for P&Z to schedule a meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if you have a proposal, if you have, if we want to borrow from someplace, Dawn and I ought to be able to come up with an ordinance proposal.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, I took a quick look at what Rehoboth has, and it's actually looks kind of burdensome, and I didn't know if there was something simpler that we could come up with. But I'd be glad to work with you too to try to come up with something that's fairly straightforward, yet keeps the runoff out of the sewers, lakes, and the bay, right?
So we don't need to take a vote, we just refer
No,
to,
we'll just do
refer
it.
to our attorney and to
Yeah,
Dawn.
we'll just work on it and then bring it to
They
another
have
meeting.
they don't have much to do anyway, right?
So we could schedule a call early next week and start talking about what your expectations are.
That
Yeah, that's
cover
fine.
this item well enough for everybody? Okay, thank you. Let's move on to item number 6 then. Discuss and possibly vote to approve the appointment of 6 elected officials for the town of Dewey Beach 2021 municipal election. And you have the short, very short bios on the 6 election officials. Every one is a third-year election official, one is served several years, one is second-year election official, one is longest-serving election official, one is third-year election official, and one has been an official for many years. So these are all basically reappointments. So is there a motion or anything that someone would like to give?
Motion to approve the 6.
All 6? Is it all right to do all 6 at one time, Mr.?
I think you can, if any one of the members was uncomfortable with that, which would imply that they didn't support one of the 6, then they could speak up and wish to vote individually. If you don't hear from any of your members, then I think you can move ahead.
So there's a motion on the floor to accept all 6
Second.
appointments. A second from Mr. Stevens. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any against, say nay.
Nay? No, kidding.
Any abstentions? You just said aye, you can now say nay again. Okay, thank you. Passed unanimously, Kate.
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'd like to release Mr. Evans. He's got to drive back to Salisbury, catch a plane back up to Rochester, so.
Adios.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
It'd be great to see you all again soon.
Thank you. Good. We appreciate your help on this.
You're welcome.
Item number 7, discuss proposed revised Dewey Beach Employee Policy Manual. This was only a discussion item at this time, and then next month it'll be discussed and vote. But I want you to know that I've gone through both of these items. That's the old policy manual. It's 55, 57 pages long, I think. This is the new suggested policy manual. We have employees, Sheena and our, I want to call them research and development. Why do I want to call that? HR.
Consultant.
HR have been working their tails off trying to cut it down to size, and this one is, how many pages? 27 pages. 27 pages. I've gone through the new one, and I've got line items up the yin-yang that I'd like to discuss and talk about. And I'd like to know what was changed. We don't have a red line item, so in my opinion, we need somebody to go through the old one and say, we changed this and refer to the item in the new one so that we can make a decision on it.
Well, I just have a question about how logistically it was created. Did you actually change the old document, or did you start from scratch?
Diane Campanelli started from scratch. I've
Okay.
been working with her. She did section 1 and a few of the other, a little bit from each of the others. I took the prior policy manual and altered some of the policies where, like, holidays are not spelled out. It's now just, we go by the county and the state. So that when the state changes and adds Juneteenth, like they did last year, out of the blue, we adapt with it. And it doesn't have to come back to y'all to make the changes.
Okay.
But what I'm saying is that I'd like to know, I'd like an easy way for us not to have to go line by line down these books. That we'd be told what policies were actually changed and where they are in this new book. So, I mean, because I'm just looking at the new one and it took me a number of days to do that. So, and we set the policy. I don't want us setting policy by not looking at the book and just saying, okay.
Well, just as a comment, is it easy enough to figure out, what have been the changes, additions, and deletions?
I can work on that over this weekend.
From a policy perspective,
Yes,
just to
over
know.
Over this weekend, I can work on that.
Well, we don't want you.
Well, we
looking
have
on-
until next,
Well,
yeah.
yeah, it
Next
it
meeting.
needs to be done for the next one.
Yeah, I
Can
mean,
you have it by Monday?
just a for instance,
I'll
you
do
know,
it while I'm watching the
there's
movie
I
tomorrow.
was telling Sheena earlier, there's a, item 6-8 and 3-14 are duplicate items. And there's the exact wording. 6-6 and 3-12 are also duplicate items. And they're working their tails off, but we can't make a judgment yet. And we certainly, if we don't have a few weeks to look at it, most of us would start making discussions without knowing what we're talking about.
I agree.
Mr. Person.
So I guess the question is, what's our process going to be? I mean, when would we target to have another draft? How long should we have to review that? And then, do we have to come to a specific approval decision for this to become the official employee manual for the town?
The commissioners set the policy, so
Okay.
it is a employee policy manual.
Okay.
We have to approve it, at least that's the way I see it. Now, I'm just one person right now.
Okay, I'd also like to.
Versus later, more than one?
I would also like to add to our consideration some assessment of the extent to which there might be any conflicts with the new charter that
That's a
we
good point.
will be adopted fairly soon. There's also, just one other thing I noticed, that there is let me back up, just with respect to the charter. The employee appeal process in case of a termination has been changed in the new charter. And in fact, we are supposed to, as a council, we are supposed to specify whatever that appeal right is to be. And so I think that's a duty that we have to undertake
Yeah,
and make sure that's part of the employee manual.
Yeah, that's gotta be part of the
Yeah,
policy.
the other thing I wanted to mention is we have a whistleblower protection policy, which is on the books. I think there has been some concern about that. I think our council had some concern about that, and I don't honestly recall what the concern was. But, you know, it's on the books. We either need to revisit that and change it so that it's appropriate, but in any case, whatever that final product is, it should be a part of the employee policy manual. And there's some things in there that are similar to what's in that whistleblower policy, but there are some things that are not in there, in the current in the draft, rather, employee policy manual.
Yeah, so, you're right, where do we go from here?
Yeah, the question is, well, what's our process going to be?
Yeah.
Our timeline?
Is it realistic to say that we could discuss and vote a month from now? And if so, when would we have to, I know I'd have to get something at least 2 weeks ahead of time to spend some time on
As long as my supervisor does not overwhelm me too much this next week, I can, let's see, Monday is by the 19th, I can have you another version.
That's enough time for me to review it.
I think realistically, we ought to target September, honestly, because I think there's probably a lot of work
That'd be
here.
fine with me.
So,
Is
Mr.
there-
Mayor, you know, given that our finances, right now, I've told Sheena, trying to get our finances, you know, because we're not able to give you the complete report tonight, that's gotta be done next week. Okay, I want that done first. And I agree with
Fine.
Commissioner Persinger that this could probably go to September. I hate kicking it down the road, but, Sheena is a one-person show in there, and we're short our clerk, so we
She
got
does a hell of
Kate
a
doing,
job.
we got Kate doing 2 jobs, so they're really overloaded in the front office, so I would ask that this go to September.
Bill, is there any specific element of the revised manual that needed some, for us to at least focus on? Is there anything that in town hall or that we should be thinking about, a change or alteration that affects your daily operation?
Nothing off the top of my head
Okay.
that affects our daily operation.
No, this manual, one of the main things that we're pushing.
More accurate.
Reason I'm pushing to get this is because there were federal and state laws that were not, that have been updated since the last one. And lactation breaks need to be provided with, you know, a place for that. And due to our town clerk now being a mom, I needed to think about that. We need to think about our employees. So that's why I was pushing to get this, so that I can make sure that everybody gets their opportunities covered.
So, is there a motion maybe to set this, or a desire to put this off till September then?
I would make a motion that we delay final consideration of this until September, until a September town council
There's a
meeting.
motion, is there a second?
Second, yeah.
There's a second by Mr. Jazinski. Is there any further discussion? The only thing I would say as far as discussion is that we need to start looking at both of them, because I tell you, I've only looked at the one so far, and I remember some of the things out of the old one. But it's gonna take quite a while, and you all need to start looking at it, and if we're gonna ask them to change things, send it to Sheena, send it to Bill, one of the two, and tell them what you're concerned about. And if you can't find a concern on all those pages, at least half those pages, you're not reading it. So you need to read it.
Uh-oh. I was reading it and I wasn't finding concerns. I was telling you. I found one typo and that was like, oh, there's a typo.
I like him.
Well, anyway, is there any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Any against, say nay. Abstentions, unanimous. Thank you very much. Next item. Discuss and possibly vote on proposed revisions to Resolution 36 concerning purchasing and invoice authorization levels on all town purchases. Mr. Zolper, would you like to take this item?
Yes, sir. Thank
And
you.
I'll speak up after you do.
Thank you. So I've been looking at this for quite some time. What levels does the town manager have to make purchases? What level do we have where we have to get bids, and when do we have to go to get a vote from the mayor and the commissioners? And then with the air conditioner going down at the police station the other week, it kind of brought it to a head. This was something that I've been looking at, but I mean, here we were, we're a very hot part of the summer, and the air conditioners go down. I'm getting the 3 different estimates. I'm reaching out to the mayor. I'm like, Mayor, I've got somebody. And the mayor said, well, we need to reach out to the commissioners for a vote. And it was basically on a vote of about $7,500. I just felt that, the mayor said, hey, the ordinance or the code said we have to do it this way, so we did it that way. And the next day, by about 8:30, 8:45, he had at least 2 or 3 of the other commissioners that said, go ahead and move forward with the air conditioning unit. But I feel that I need to have the ability to purchase things under $10,000 and under. I think I should be able to call the mayor and say, Mayor, this is why we need to purchase it. I can put it in writing to him or her and justify it, and then the mayor comes back and says, make that happen. So we went back and looked at the last resolution on this, number 36. It was last updated in October of 1996, and the town manager at this time and back then, the limit was $2,500. So our budget is approximately $3.4 or $3.7 million. So I'm asking for it to be increased for the manager, town manager, with the approval of the mayor, to make purchases of $10,000 and less without having to go to the commissioners.
And if you read it, Bill, it's up to $2,500 the town manager alone would be able to authorize. And he would tell us later what he's done, but up to $2,500. Between $2,501 and $10,000, the town manager and the mayor together, and then over $10,000 would be by majority vote of the commissioners. And I have to tell you, Mr. Stevens had a prime example of why didn't just the mayor and the town manager be able to do this? I mean, that was his comment, so it was a good comment.
And if I could, Mr. Mayor, so some of the towns in the area, for example, South Bethany, their limit for their town manager is $10,000. They can do, Bethany Beach is $25,000. Millsboro is actually $50,000. Ocean View is $7,500. So I think we need to bring it up to the.
I'm all in favor of what's been proposed.
Completely.
Mr. Stevens, you had.
No, if it's appropriate, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the changes to resolution number 36 and open for discussion. I did have 3 points of discussion that.
Second.
All right, there's a motion and a second by Mr. Stevens and Mr. Jazinski. I'm kidding. Any further discussion?
Yeah, just a few clarifying points. I didn't know if there should be any wording here that would encompass out of the operating budget. Because there may be some things that that we're going to purchase or buy as part of that's already approved through the operating budget that hits those limits. These are things that we didn't necessarily
It
see.
was my understanding that that's what it is now.
Yeah.
If it's been, if the
I didn't read
budget-
it, when I read it, I didn't see out of the budget, so that's kind of
If
where.
as I understand it
Okay.
now, I may be wrong, if the budget's been approved and those were in the line items that were approved, I think we voted to approve it. But Mr. Persinger, you had your hand up?
Well, yeah, I was kind of trying to sort out the same issue that Bill's struggling with. You know, I'm not aware of
25
anything other
years.
than Resolution 36,
Things cost more
which
than-
prohibits you now from doing this, spending money up to $10,000. You have an obligation to come back and report to us on any changes in the budget. And if you have an expenditure that's really going to affect the budget, you have to report back to us, I believe. I think that's an obligation that's probably in the charter and the town manager's responsibilities. And $10,000 is big enough, I think, that it in fact could affect the budget. So it seems to me you have an obligation to come back and get a budget amendment if it's something like that. But if it's a line item in the budget where there's already, sufficient money to pay for an expenditure that you need to make, then I don't see any need for you to come back to us certainly for approval to do that.
Well,
So I'm trying to struggle with.
the point was, like, the air conditioner wasn't in the budget. We knew that. I mean, you could claim it was, but it wasn't, and he should be able to say, town mayor, can I do it? And the
Yeah.
mayor should be able to say, I'm with you, go ahead and do it. And that's why we wanted to change resolution 36.
But the question is, I mean, we just approved an additional $25,000 as an amendment to the budget. What's the threshold level for? Are you saying that $10,000 is small enough that it's not going to have a serious impact on the budget, and therefore they don't have to report back to us? Is that the notion?
Well, I still think he has to report back what he's spent or what's been authorized.
Well, he always-
He and the
does.
mayor, but I think.
But
we
doesn't
need
necessarily
to-
require to come to here to get approval, especially in the situation with the
Right,
HVAC
this would,
system.
that would release the mayor from having to call the, 3 or 4 commissioners and say, what do you think about this? Because we need it now.
And I understand that, but I guess my question is $10,000 small enough that it would not
Oh.
necessarily require a budget amendment?
I think it is.
I mean, is that really kind of the practical effect of this?
For a $3.7 million budget, I think it's a fair number to have, and I think we can, if we find that it's not the right number in the future, then we can redress it.
Okay.
Any other?
Yeah, the only other word that I struggled with is may.
Where's
With the,
that?
no, any expenditure $5,000 or more may require competitive bidding as per the town charter, and will require.
It does require it, I think.
No,
It does not. There are certain conditions under which you do not have to
Oh, that's
competitively bid.
correct.
If it's personal services,
Professional
if it's a
services.
university, or a couple of other exceptions as well in the charter.
That's
Okay.
right, so,
Yeah, this resolution applies to material supplies and equipment,
okay.
and equipment repairs.
Just one other point.
go ahead,
In
sir.
terms of the resolution, in terms of making this, realistic in today's world, could we eliminate the paragraph that says many items such as cameras, radios, adding machines?
I was just laughing at that myself. Adding
I
machines.
mean, I don't think that adds
they still
anything to
around?
this.
Do it on your phone.
I think we can remove that paragraph completely.
Oh, good, I feel much better.
All right.
So to the vote?
Yeah, well, it's now an amended motion, right? Who made the motion?
Bill made the
Mr.
motion.
Stevens, you made the motion? You're willing
No,
to
I think there's
amend it?
clarification, so I think as it was proposed,
You're-
Stay.
You have to amend it to take that paragraph out.
thank you, sir. Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to approve Resolution 36.
Well, you drop your motion and then make a motion.
I'd like to drop my first motion and like to revise and add another motion to approve the changes to Resolution number 36 with the amendment of removing the paragraph, starting with many items such as cameras, radios, adding machines, and other items, and ending regardless of amount.
Right.
So
Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Jazinski. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any against, say nay. Any abstentions? Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Next item, discuss possible, that's done.
Number 10.
Review 2021 financials. Mr. Zolper.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I sent out an email earlier this week talking about the way the holiday fell and the federal holiday being on Friday, how we weren't able to get the numbers in as quickly as we like. So Sheena put together a quick summary and she sent that out. You can see we're doing very well with the transfer tax for the month, 243, 241.51 for the month, and for the year, 702,726.64. Seasonal parking, we're doing very well. We made budget at 327,600. Dog licenses, we're doing well. The new dog, premium dog licenses, we sold 43 out of 100 over the last 3 weeks. And our sales on the beach in the morning, where we purchased the gator down there, and our employee is doing an outstanding job. I don't know if any of the commissioners have had an opportunity to talk to any of the folks on the beach or actually seen Vince on the beach and his approach to getting the folks to purchase the licenses. But he's just doing an outstanding job down there. And if you haven't been down on the beach and watched him in action, he's really being the ambassador that I wanted him to be down there. And the ladies in the front office have made these dog kit bags, so when he's down there, he gives out this bag, it's got a treat in it, it's got a bag to clean up after the dog, and it's got the rules in it. And it's to a point now where he pulls that gator up on the beach, the dogs that see him every day down there run over to his gator. So that's the only issue that we're having there. The dogs are actually following the gator down the street because he's giving them the dog treat. So it's done very well for us. The donation for the goat, you can see there was $24.75. Thank you, Monty, Vince, Drew, and Jimmy, and the Dewey Beach Partnership on that. Dewey Beach Enterprises, we talked about this a little bit in the budget finance meeting today. This is an extension on the building license or the building permit down there because they have not gotten their CO yet. So Jim Dedes and Dawn negotiated the 33.3 for them making the extended payment. The auction proceeds from a couple lifeguard stands and some of the other items that were at the warehouse. The COVID revenues are $28,683.50. USAA accident settlement, this is the pole that the chief's been working with on New Orleans Street that was struck probably, in April? Yeah. The chief, we've got the money, it's a matter now of the company just coming out with the pole back up. We are storing that currently in the annex and getting the cameras, right, chief, to get them installed? Correct. And we're trying to get that done at the same time as putting up new antennas in town, and that seems to be the holdup.
Yeah, I talked to the vendor, ADT. Due to COVID, they're having trouble getting the antennas because they come from overseas and some of the equipment. So that's our holdup. It's not because the company's dragging their feet, it's the actual equipment itself.
Thanks, Chief. The American Rescue Act money, the half that we got, $107,976.35. That gives us $184,6273. And then the LESO money is about $107,000 right now. So the set asides are $28,971. Bottom line, we're $200,000 above the budget for the month and $750 above the budget for the year so far. I'd also like to point out we had 121 bonfire permits put out for the month of June. 121. And I don't have the breakdown between property owners and non-property owners, but just at $30 per one, that's about $3,600 just on bonfires in the month of June. And I'd like to thank Sheena for putting these numbers together. Thank you so much. And we do owe you the end of the month numbers by Tuesday of this coming this week.
That'll be no problem.
Now that you don't have to worry about the HR manual.
I can do them during the movie on Saturday.
Okay.
That was town manager comment, excuse me.
No, it's
Commissioner-
Now it's financials. Is there additional
I'm
town
sorry,
manager
that was
comments?
financial, yeah. Town manager have any other comments?
I do have comments.
Okay.
I do have comments, so just to run through some numbers with code enforcement, we did 2 booths in June, and I know in the past it's been a lot said that we don't ever use our booths, but we did. Dog licenses of 4,780 coming out of the code enforcement for the month of June. Noise meter readings, 26. So we have noise meter readings out on Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday nights for between the hours of 10 and 2. Parking citations written, 1,400 approximately. Park mobile sales, 213,000 for the month. From Todd's department, open water rescues from June 11th to July 8th, 7. Major injury EMT responses, 15. Missing persons, which would be kids, would be 10. 1 civil code enforcement, and that was when they had to call the police to come over the dune on an alcohol violation, and the police did that. Beach chair, 31 beach chair reservations during that 30-day period. And we'll go over at the next meeting with the mayor. We have an individual in town that purchased five additional handicap wheelchairs for us. Very fortunate that he's able to do that for us. For the police department, incidents, 438 incidents, criminal arrests, 48, traffic citations, 93, parking tickets, 210. So the police department's stepping up right in the parking tickets, as they should. You may see this sticker out and about on some property. So what we're having is some problems with people tying their kayaks up, chaining them up to some of our beach property at the bay sides. And what they're doing is they're laying those kayaks sometimes on top of beach grass inside of areas they shouldn't. If they do that, what we do is we take this sticker, we put it on there. We don't put the whole sticker on there because it's really tough to get off. We only put half of the sticker on there from the back side. And we just write on it, please have it removed by noon tomorrow. And so far, on 3 kayaks, we've had them all removed by the next day. So we're going to continue to do that until they know they shouldn't have the kayaks there at the end of the streets chained up to some of our boards. I'm going to go real quick over some other things. So the police continue to do a great job. I think it's important that the chief is here for all our meetings like this. Thanks, Chief, for being here tonight. I know Friday night going back and forth from your residents is a problem. We've already ordered new chairs for in here while we were sitting here tonight. Sheena went ahead and did that. Thank you, Sheena. So in August,
Can Gary keep his?
We'll have new chairs for you.
Except for Gary's, right? We kept that one.
We have noticed a lot of shoulders on the roads, right? And Commissioner Bauer brought it to my attention on Reed Street, Dickinson Street, Van Dyke Street, Rodney Street, McKinley Street, where it drops off the road, where it's been washed out and there's some holes. So we've got 40 tons of crush and run coming in that we've purchased. Half of that's going to be dumped on Rodney Street up off of lot 27. And the reason we picked lot 27, there isn't a house there. So it's going to be dumped there, and then Don and his assistant, they are going to move that between those streets on the ocean side and fill in those holes and try to level out some of that so people aren't twisting their ankles at night and falling off the edge of the roads there while they're walking. And then we're going to dump some over on the bay side, and we'll use that pile to also work on the streets on the bay side. I sent an email to the infrastructure chairman just to let him know what was going on, because he does walk around and he does see things, and then he asked me the question, so I got in front of that, and I think I emailed that to you also, Mayor. The bushes have all been trimmed down between Jersey and Chesapeake Street. Trash cans, I think you saw, we've doubled the trash cans between Dickinson Street and Bellevue, where most of our trash, we have our trash problems. That's going to be on the bay side. And we're doing an extra pickup on Wednesdays. On Wednesdays, we're going to do an extra pickup just with those cans. Just with those cans, it'll be an extra pickup to try to keep them empty. And then I think you saw in the paper that, with the police help, we did a trash pull. We went through, we found some things in there that led us to somebody that was dumping trash in town, that lived outside of town, and we gave them a warning. Soon there'll be stickers on the trash cans that'll tell about the fines. As I go through here, so back in July of 2019, I know Scott came in front of the commissioners and got a raise for the police department. And at that time, there was a comment made that, what about our admin folks that work in the police department, especially our administrative assistant and our dispatchers. And according to the folks that I've talked to, the commissioners said we would look at that. Well, that's been 2 years, and I think we should look at it. I'll come before you maybe in August or September with some numbers that I think that we should be looking at. Our dispatcher should be paid a little more, and our administrative assistant should be paid more, which is comparable to probably Bethany and some of the other police departments in the area. Chief, any comments on that?
No, yeah,
I think it was 2 years ago, I think is when it was, and I think it was agreed that they would come back and revisit the civilian staff and the dispatchers and kind of get asked.
I agree we should
Got
do that.
asked that a few times by my employees. Is it on the horizon? And I said something to Bill, and that's where that's coming from.
Thanks, Chief. So we also are completing our respectful work training, which we're required by federal law to do. Sheena's headed that up. She's done it with the lifeguards. She's done it with police department parking and all the town employees. So we're working with that. De-escalation training is set for July.
Correct.
We're going to be doing that with the lifeguards and with the police department, de-escalation training. So Captain Warren, in his report, one of the things I saw under item 22 of his report was the police department's homepage should be updated, redesigned to provide a more comprehensive set of services and explain a great deal more about their operations. So the chief has brought a vendor to me that came to us and said for approximately $8,000, they could update the homepage for the police department. I spoke with the mayor about it. The mayor suggested that I try to find two more companies that would bid against that. I've talked to the chief, and we're having a hard time finding a company here in Delaware that will provide the security and services that this company will provide for this home webpage for the police department. So I may come back in August and ask for a single source approval to just go with this one company. When I do, I'll bring you justification explaining why we want to do a single source. There used to be a state contract with this company, but they dropped it. I don't know, Chief, if you have anything else on that?
No, that's correct. And the reason, when we had our meeting back in April with them, one of the things that this company can do, and I think it'll help us and bring us, more applicants, is they'll be able to actually put every piece of information in there instead of doing the paper applications and all that and submit it to the police. But we've got to safeguard that because you're doing date of births, social security numbers, that kind of stuff, and what we require for it. This company, they all were former federal employees with NSA and a few other agencies. They can guarantee that security. And I don't, one of the biggest things is identity theft. I don't want just a company to say they can do it and not be able to deliver it. So, but I think, we get that all the time from these applicants is, can I do it online? Is there any way I can do it online? And trying to scan it and send it back. This way they'll be able to complete their application. It'll be easier on my admin staff, and it'll be more friendly for the applicant to apply for us. So that's why we're looking at. We met with him. The guy was very impressive. He does the city of Milford. He does the Georgetown. He does the Laurel Police Department. And there's several others. Really great company. The guy's willing to work with us, and it's scalable. If we didn't want as much information out there and just wanted to go for the recruitment and all that, he could do that, but at a cheaper price. But that was the ballpark figure that he gave us to do the complete, secure website. So that's the history on that one.
I have a question. I think I know the answer, right, but does the police department have to have a separate webpage from the town?
We don't have to. It's standard. If you look at other police agencies, they have their own. If you look at ours now, and I hear it all the time, there's a lot of information. There's, and navigating to get where they need to go sometimes can be, kind of cumbersome. We've always had our own when Dick Cleveland set it up many, many, many years ago. Poor Dick's moved on.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to update it. I mean, it's just there. And like I said, I think one of the things Warren said was the more appeasing it is, it would be better for a recruiting tool and to provide a little bit more modernization compared to the old technology that Dick had to work with. So that's...
Mr. Persenter.
Well, yeah, I am just, that's the same issue. I'm just a little concerned about having a completely separate website. I mean, I think there has to be some, at least some links to at least part of, if you're going to have a separate website, there have to be some links in the main town page.
Yes, sir.
To the police. So, I mean, there's a lot of information that should be available for the public. It just seems to me it's kind of a separate function, all the applicant information, having an online application for people who are interested in becoming a police officer. And then clearly, once they fill it out, that has to be safeguarded, you know, if it's electronic information. But I kind of see that as a separate function from, you know, a publicly available website where people can get information about the police department, how many officers there are, and what sort of, you know, functions you have, and that kind of thing.
Click on departments and.
Yeah, well, if you go there, I think you get, at least
Get a
in
message
one of the
from the
links, you get something that's very old and has the picture of a woman on there who's been missing for many, many years. Still missing.
She's still missing.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, I didn't want to stop you from that. I knew there was a question out there about, do we have to have a, you know, I know we don't have to have it, but is it your recommendation?
It's my recommendation, we have a link from our town of Dewey Beach to the police department's homepage. But I think what I have to do is get over that, but also convince you that this one company, single source is going to be the way to go. And I need to get the justification for that.
Mr. Stevens?
Mr. Silver, I didn't hear clearly why the Warren report indicated that we should have a new website. Is there a specific reason?
It doesn't, it's just under number 22, it just says police department homepage should be updated and redesigned to provide a more comprehensive set of services and explain a great deal more about the operations of the public.
Bill wasn't here when Greg did his thing, Scott was, and I think most of you council was. When he gave his presentation, I think one of the things he was doing is the recruitment aspect of it, and he wanted to bring it more user-friendly with our citizens. Like Commissioner Persinger said, just more transparency. How many men do the police department have? What some of the services they do, and that kind of stuff. It just upgrading the technology is the way he presented it that night when he gave an overall of his report. Is that about how he? Yeah.
Any other questions about this subject? Bill, you want to finish?
I do. I want to point out Kate's done an outstanding job with our homepage. You'll see some changes on the homepage, but she's also worked to get the following forms fillable out online. So the hotel tax form, the new one that went out, that's fillable online now. The combination tax, the rental licensing, the business licensing, the dog licenses, and she's working on getting most of those to be payable online, correct, Kate?
Yeah, we're pretty much almost there. Rental licenses, form and payment went up today.
This is a lot cleaner.
Last to go is pretty much business licenses, but everything else is there. Accommodations tax forms are fillable, payable online, residential rental license, commercial rental license, dog license, yeah.
Thanks, Kate. I really, it's been a lot, and it'll make it a lot easier.
Just want to, the idea was originally a number of years ago, and I think this preceded Kate, and I know it preceded Sheena and Dawn, but the idea was that we started talking about interactive websites and the fact that if somebody saw construction going on, if I saw my neighbor had construction going on, I could go onto the website and see whether they actually had a permit without calling town hall and taking up their time to look for a permit. Is that going to be available, or is that possible?
I don't know. I
Okay.
didn't know that was one of the things we were trying to do.
Well, I mean, it's possible.
The only comment I would make is kind of going back to your point about $8,000 to update the police site is the more that kind of advanced functionality is always available, and your prices start going up the more interactive you make anything. And the only thing I was going to mention is that for $8,000 you're getting a kind of a robust website that lets people do applications and stuff like that. My opinion is if someone knows how to do it and kind of already has a process that they go through, it sounds pretty reasonable, you know, on it. It's hard to do these really advanced things where you get into, the town has different systems for everything to allow the public to query, you know, because you got data privacy rights and all kinds of things you have to consider.
Go ahead, Bill.
So I'd like to point out, our business partners here in Dewey Beach continue to step up against COVID. Highway 1, on the July 15th, between the hours of 4 and 8, is going to do a vaccination clinic in their parking lot. That's going to be, you know, Alex Pires is working well with the DEMA director. So that's going to be taking place. on the 15th between 4 and 8. So that's, following also what they did down at the Starter. So it's just showing that Dewey Beach and the business partners and the chief and the town are being very proactive. You're going to see a lot of policemen on the weekends out in front of some of the establishments here in town. I think it's better that we're out and about proactive. They see us, folks see us out there, and they know that the police are present here in Dewey Beach. Again, I'd like to thank Kate and Sheena for all the great work that they've done over the past 2 weeks. And I know it's really short up in the office with Ashley being out. So thank you, ladies, for all the work you did. That's it, Mayor.
All right,
Can I ask just one question?
Go ahead, Gary, first.
How long have you been here?
6 months.
Thank you. I think we have an
obviously,
obligation.
we made the right choice, didn't we?
Yeah, but I think we have an obligation.
The evaluation form, I turned
Yes.
over to the mayor.
Oh, yes. That's what I mean. He's due for an evaluation.
Was it 6 months?
I think
thought
so.
it was
In the contract, I think it's 6 months.
Okay.
I'll go back and look.
Right. You and I talked about it, but I didn't realize it was that time again. He and I have discussed it.
We have.
And not at length, I guarantee you. Yeah.
I just had a quick question on.
Go ahead, sir.
The town manager's comments. When I looked at the police report, those numbers that were listed in, 16, 17, 18, 19, those were year-to-date, they were full year numbers, right? And what you were showing on those reports, were just the year-to-date, correct?
Are you talking about the statistics
Yeah.
for the month? I think they're, I have to go back and look. I think they're for the month. Put everything away.
Where you have years, is that calendar year, is that fiscal year?
So are you talking about the stats?
Yeah.
So that's, the chief just said that's just for the month of June.
Go down below the next section. So when you see 540 parking tickets
Right.
last year versus 300 this year, is that the same period, or is that in 3 months? I was just curious for the cutoffs, that's all.
I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, because the accident one is the one I just said, where I saw 48 accidents, or 24 vehicle accidents, that's the one that stood out in my mind going, was it? But you can just let us know.
Okay.
Yeah, belabor.
Yearly totals for that
Okay.
But for this year, is that,
That'd be up there by the monthly,
that's just for,
The month.
okay.
just by the month.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, so you finished?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Commissioner's comments, Commissioner Bauer,
No comments.
Commissioner Jazinski.
The only comment I wanted to make was you were talking about doing the potentially salary adjustments for some of the civilian police staff. I think it's a great idea, but I kind of remembered after the fact, when we talked about raises, I think earlier this year, if I'm not mistaken, we talked, I think you may have brought it up, Commissioner Persinger, that we potentially need to kind of look at everything, like everyone in town. And if you're going to do that, you may just want to kind of expand that scope. I think that was part of the discussion.
I don't remember it. But
Yeah, I remember when we were talking about
It's
raises.
an excellent point, so I'll accept it.
Yeah, when we were talking about staff raises, we talked about that there may have needed to be some adjustments, so you may want to kind of broaden the scope. It's the only thing. That's my only comment.
Commissioner Persinger.
I have no comments.
Commissioner Stevens.
Just two quick comments, just to let the committee know that the investment commissioners know that the investment committee met last night to review the overall performance. There's some conversation around how we're going to implement the fund balance, and Commissioner Persinger are going to work together and just to
With
solidify
Sheena.
that, Sheena, to make sure that everyone knows how the funds are going to be flow so we can look at it. There's also some conversation around looking at our investment risk profile, being the fact that when the risk profile was originally created, the bond market had much higher returns. Bond market is very low right now, so are we getting the necessary return on investments on our investment funds? Also, the Budget and Finance Committee met today, and they continue to look at new sources of revenue, and have decided, or also have asked to look into the comprehensive plan from an infrastructure perspective, so that we can start to prioritize some of the capital improvements that we have and to review it again. So just wanted to report on both those committees are active and doing a great job. That's all I have.
Is that all? Thank you very much. And Mayor Dale H. Cook. First, I just want to have you all understand that businesses, some businesses are paying for extra police services. And we've got an additional, how many people out on the street now?
And correct me if I'm wrong, Chief, there'll be 4 starting on the weekends, correct?
Yeah, we've got 4 out there, but you'll see them at different locations. Yeah.
Yeah, I just want the people to know that, especially the people that watching the meeting from the outside, that we're putting additional police forces on the street so that we can, cover any stop any possible increase of trouble.
That's correct.
And the
Visibility is
business,
proactive, sir.
and the businesses are helping fund that. So I want you to know that. I want to thank Sheena, Kate, and Dawn, and all the rest of the people that are working for the town in general, but in particular, the ones I've seen lately are the admin folks. And I know for a fact, the little that I'm in town hall, I know for the fact that how hard they work. They're working their tails off. Are you coughing over there? And Mr. Stevens, you and I need to talk because I had somebody that wanted to donate to the town and wanted to, the way their foundation was set up was that it had to be a tax exempt entity to, what is it, 501c3?
Yes.
All right, and
If it's-
you had
Yeah.
showed us that the town is tax exempt, number one, but their donation is tax exempt. I mean,
If their foundation restricts to only 501c3s, then we are not.
yeah, I got that, but they had suggested about doing what the Lions Club did lately and creating a foundation so that everything would be tax deductible, you know, and so. we
Happy to have the conversation with you
Yeah, thank you.
offline and.
Right.
The other person.
And I'm glad you mentioned about evaluation, it's about that time, so Bill and I will talk, and certainly I and the commissioners will talk to get that done. That's it, that's all I have. Anybody else have anything else from the audience, commissioners? I hear a motion to adjourn. Second done, thank you very much. Not quite 2.5 hours, that's too long. Thank you, Gary.
Establishment has to close.
Bringing that item up that I didn't explain properly why we changed the agenda.
Yeah, I didn't understand what that was related.
Yeah, that was my fault.
You may know on this. We're partial.